I am delighted to say that I am joined by writer-director Bassam Tariq and writer and lead of Mogul Mowgli, Riz Ahmed. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I'm going to kick off with a few questions, but yeah, keep the questions coming all the way through from home, and we'll try and get to as many as we can. First of all, congratulations, both of you, on this epic film. I want to start from the beginning in terms of it's the first time I've seen a film that speaks to a certain diaspora, second generation story that I've never seen kind of in cinema before. It kind of is that in-between narrative that is really hard to get to, and kind of the truth of it's the in-between that so many of us live, but we never quite ever question or are confronted with until something comes in your way and you realize that you're living two lives. But, you know, there's the whole in-between that you're perhaps not joining up. That's a really long-winded way of me asking kind of how did this come together? Kind of, was it an exploration of the in-between that you both wanted to look at?
Riz, I want you to start, man. I want to know what you have to say.
What's all that about? You're the director, bro.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, like, okay, like,
passing off his generosity. See what he's doing. I think you should start.
No,
get in there.
Yeah, the thing is that, like, I can't, like, this film doesn't exist without both of us taking those steps together. And I think so much of it is this conversation of us just trying to understand how we, like, I mean, it's like such a cheesy way to say it, but how do we actually belong and inhabit the spaces that we exist in? And I think one thing that I realized that him and I were both feeling was, like, there's this element of, like, man, we're getting older, and someone younger might come around and take this little slot or this little moment that we're in. And I felt that when, like, I had kids, I was like, dude, I've already missed my moment. And I remember Riz was like, yeah, I feel like there's just a younger kid just coming by to take my slot. And I was like, that's fascinating. I think we need to just kind of start inhabiting what it means for us to be in these places. And then also, I think when we start looking into those questions, I think it goes into a deeper thing, because we just didn't want to make it about career, because I feel like so much of our own identity is even when we got started, Maria, we started talking about, like, your grandfather and then the name and all that stuff. It's because we can't deny that we come from such a beautiful and rich heritage, but we also don't know how to contend with it, and how do we translate it and bring it to life. And I think that was really exciting. Like, how do we actually contend with this? How do we really come to terms with it? So that's where it kind of started, I think.
Yeah, for me, I guess, that thought of, like, might we be replaced in the end? I mean, I guess that was a thought to do with a thread in the story, but that wasn't really the heart of this for me. That's not where for me, it was more about this idea of trying to find a way forwards. Like, what is forwards? You know, what does forwards look like? Is a step forwards a step towards going on a world tour? Or is a step closer to your family and yourself? Is a step forwards maybe a step into the past? You know, I guess it's this idea of you don't know where you're going until you know where you're coming from. And for so many of us, you know, in the diasporic experience, or children of immigrants or minorities, we don't really know where we're coming from, because our history is hidden from us by other people and hidden from us by our own people. And there's a lot to unravel and unpick there. And so I guess for me, this film is an attempt to kind of make a bit of a map, you know, in the same way that I try to in my music. It's a map to try and find a way home. And what you realize is the map is home. You know, home is this work. Home is this film, or that's the space where we can fully be our complicated, contradictory selves. And so I guess we wanted to kind of make a place where we could put all of ourselves, and that be the home that maybe Zed is looking for.
And in that home, I suppose, it's maybe I'm wrong, but the home in this case is not so much about a geographical space, but the home is about family and kind of discovering, kind of, like you said, who that family is. I wanted to pick up on that idea that you said about trauma, and especially in South Asian culture, and the idea of kind of inherited trauma in other cultures is packed out and people, it's accepted and it's talked about, but the inherited sort of trauma of the South Asian diaspora, or that story, is not something that's often kind of addressed even by our own communities, or kind of by our parents or grandparents. It's something that's kind of, there's always this attitude of getting on with something and just doing it. And what the film does, it really taps into the notion of trauma and how that manifests through different generations. And I'm just wondering if that was something that you were very, very conscious of when you were both writing.
Yeah, I think definitely. We also looked into like epigenetics, which is this idea of inheriting trauma. And a lot of it, I think we were doing research. We looked into our own family members, like the whole thing of somebody hiding within clothes. That was my father-in-law, and I think we did did some research also into some of the illness stuff, and maybe perhaps Riz can speak to that as well. But yeah, like it was, I think that was very important for us to kind of look into that.
Yeah, it's this idea of, epigenetics is this kind of newly growing field of understanding how traumatic experiences actually change your DNA. When something really traumatic happens, your body kind of registers it. And there's this fantastic book called The Body Keeps the Score, which I kind of mentioned in the track that I did for Mogul Mowgli called Once Kings. And it's this idea that, and then you pass that on genetically, to your offspring and their offspring. And so you have this idea of trauma being embedded into the body and being embedded into your genes and into your gene code. And this is something that we're kind of beginning to understand scientifically is a fact. And yeah, as you say, Maria, often people don't want to look at that trauma for understandable reasons. It may not help them just kind of cope and survive when they've got a new challenge to overcome as immigrants, and they need to kind of focus on the task ahead and get their head down on that. But I think part of what we wanted to look at is both the gift and the curse of inheritance. That's another thing that the film is about for me. It's always hard when people say, what is this film about? It's about a lot of things, I think that there's a cohesion thematically and narratively around what it's about. It's about someone who doesn't know where they're going until they know where they're coming from. And it's about family versus ambition and success versus spirituality. But for me, it's about also that gift and that curse, because there's the curse of inheritance that comes from maybe that trauma and the history of that trauma, but also the history of that trauma is coupled with people's response to that trauma, which was creative, which was survival, which was resilience, which is also inherited. So, our character Toba Tek Singh, who's named after the famous short story by Sadat Hasan Manto, is about a character who defies, the request to pick a side between India and Pakistan, who says, no, I'm not going to pick a side. I'm going to make my home in no man's land. That character is himself born from the rupture of partition, is himself born from the rupture of trauma. And yet that character's response to trauma was to create a home through his work, through his qawwali music. And so as much as Zed has inherited that trauma, he's also inherited the response to that trauma, which is a kind of gift and a resilience and a creative response to that trauma, which allows him to earn a living and, build a home out of his own cultural no man's land. So it's about that there's that double edge to that inheritance. It's inherited trauma, but it's also something else, which is why, one of the reasons the film's called Mogul Mowgli. These twin inheritances, the inheritance of the lost man cub who's been plucked from his village and roaming this foreign urban jungle at the behest of the white imagination, just as Kipling did to Mowgli. And you've also got the Mogul inheritance,
The duality of it. So Zed's response also kind of subconsciously is his body attacking him kind of, from the inside out, kind of forcing him to have this shut down and pause. But I'm going to skip back. In fact, I want to skip back to kind of the actual sitting down and writing of this. Both of you doing that together as co-writers. How does that even happen? How do you write together?
It just felt very fluid. I felt like we were just having a lot of conversations, and
conversations, yeah. But Bassam sits and writes at the laptop, and then we get in a room, and I'm more kind of verbal, and so I'd riff out scenes, or we'd plot the arc of things together. But Bassam would frequently be the person who goes off, writes the drafts, we come back, we unpick it, we re-riff it, we rework it, we do it together, and then he goes back and digests that. The only thing I'd add to that is what's so great working, okay, so there's two things I wanted to say that I don't know if this is related or not, but I just wanted to reflect back. Even one of the impetus to this was really the song that Riz had called Half Mogul, Half Mowgli. And I think being from the States, we don't necessarily reflect a lot on our South Asian identity. What we kind of do is we just kind of think that there's a general feeling that our identity is a bit lame, and we try to kind of perform a lot of blackness, or we go white adjacent. So we try not to pick or mine our own cultural inheritance. And I think particularly after 9/11, we started, at least myself, and I would say a lot of my friends that are Muslim, we started identifying more with this American Muslim identity. I think when I heard that song, Half Mogul, Half Mowgli, it spoke to me in a way that I didn't expect it to. And I think that's why we kind of kept coming back to it. So I really want to give credit to Riz's lyrical ability, because I think that was something that I wanted to make sure we kept in the film, and we kept pushing, having an arc through the film, through lyrics, through spoken word, which was a huge challenge, because how are we we're basically building up to this final performance in the BAFTA, right? And we're also giving you pieces of this song that we're building, but at the same time, we're also giving you these really important, I think, pieces of performance that are happening throughout. And, and that's where I think we have to credit needs to be given to where there is no film without those moments. And to also just, now that I've done a few of these Q&As and then hearing back when people respond to this moment and in the rap battle, Riz, I don't even think I told you this, but I spoke to this one guy, and he was so moved by that line that you say of I try to stand up, my blood won't let me stand up. And he was a Sri Lankan refugee, and it was just and I was just holy shit, I forgot about that line. It's such a small line of poetry, but it's so, but it's so piercing. And I feel it's moments like that, but I think we're so crucial and so critical to the writing of the film, that I think really speak to the experience. And and I think it's also, I don't know, I think it's so tough to do that, to put it out there, because you don't know, because you get really worried, will anyone really be responding to this? Is this indulgent? So I think those were always a lot of the concerns that we were going into as we were even shooting this or writing this.
I wouldn't say indulgent, I would say truthful. And there is such honesty, I suppose, I don't know, Riz, maybe it's more for you, but there's such honesty in this film, in the sense it's the first time maybe all parts of who you are coming together, all parts of you as an artist, but also there's this truth, and especially in the music, taking your own music to help feed into that narrative. Did you feel that this is one of the first times that you laying it all out there?
Yeah, part of what the film thematically touches on is where can you be your full self? And I guess what I find time and time again is, without consciously intending this to be the case, is that every time you play a character, you as an artist, you as an actor, will end up going on the same journey that the character does, always. And I guess the same thing that Zedden learns in this film, I end up learning. And so by the end of this film, I've stopped siloing off the different parts of me, and I've put all of myself in one place, in the same way that Zed is forced to accept and draw on all the different parts of himself, rather than siloing them off and bringing them all together, with unforeseen consequences. his health and also for his career, counterintuitive ones sometimes. And so I guess, yeah, I ended up going on a similar journey to what Zed went on in terms of putting it all out there and bringing it all together. But I should say that that's really down to Bassam in a big way, because I wasn't so sure about making him a rapper. I wasn't so sure at certain points about making him so close to myself. And I think Bassam really pushed me to do that. And it was also because seeing how much of Bassam was putting of himself and his own experience, his family experience into this film, it emboldened me to do the same. And I think we emboldened each other to be our unapologetic full selves. And it shows you actually just how powerful it is to collaborate with people of a similar experience or perspective, because implicitly it emboldens you to be more yourself. And when you work with people who on some gut level you think might not fully understand you, understand the fullness of your experience, you subconsciously edit yourself, you edit your responses, you edit your behavior. And the fact that we could just be our full selves meant that we were just egging each other on to just put it all out there more and more, you know. So that was part of that. But Bassam was very adamant about it, and I want him to be a rapper. I want him to be a rapper because, first of all, rap is a young man's game, and you're too old to be rapping, probably. So that's interesting. There's a ticking clock under it. And I was like, okay, thanks a lot. And then he said, also, I want him to be a rapper because I think it's interesting what we can explore as a storytelling register. You know, it opens up a lot of possibilities. So I think it was at each other's kind of provocation, but certainly at Bassam's provocation, that there's so much of me in this film. Yeah.
It's kind of it's the added tool of the power of language. So not only do you have kind of the spoken word, you have your performances as well. And I kind of wanted to talk about language in this script, because what's beautiful is the confluence of languages, where you have 2 or 3 languages spoken in a sentence. You never even realize it, because so many of us have been brought up doing that, and it's just kind of the natural way. This film is unapologetically, well, I've used this word before, but kind of authentic in the sense that of its of the way that it uses language, and also for the audience that it's for. Were you ever kind of nervous about kind of the confluence of language and that just being there and being kind of fluid in a way that kind of a certain demographic will understand? And on the same side, kind of we're always told not to think about audience when you're writing, but did you ever have that in your back of mind, go, will this reach everyone, and is this universal enough for it to kind of bring in kind of a global audience? That's a lot of questions in one, I'm sorry. Just maybe a comment. Yeah.
No, I think this is the stuff that it's tough, because I don't know if there's ever an easy answer for this stuff. But I think what's exciting about filmmaking and what's exciting about cinema is it's still super young as an art form. Right? It's only been around for maybe 100 years. And I think we're already, because we've capitalized on it, we've kind of monetized so much on it that we've created forms of what it should look like and what it should feel like. And I find that so restrictive to our own experiences. And when we look at the literature that comes from Central Asia, that comes from South Asia, that, you know, it's wild. Things are going crazy. Like if you ever read the Hamza Nama, or if you read the Mathnawi or the Conference of the Birds, like these things are wild, and they go all over the place, and there's never just a singular hero's journey. So for us, it was an important thing of like, I want to speak for myself on this, but there's always the desire of like, what are we contributing to the larger language of cinema? And so that's one thing that I'm always thinking about when I'm working on something. And another thing about like being authentic, I just think that to me, I just want to be honest. I don't want to worry about this burden, or this like polemical kind of propaganda is like way of like, you know, being super woke or whatever. Like, I think I'm with that language. Like I'm with all that, but I think there's unfortunately sometimes this like flag holding kind of, you know, hashtag culture that I find to be exciting in some ways. And it can be very empowering, but I think sometimes it can be very limiting, because then you're just speaking to this like kind of feedback loop, which can be quite dangerous. So I think for me, it's always a desire of like, does it feel honest? And I think I've just been blessed with like collaborators throughout my life, like whether it's Omar Malik, who I made my first film with, to Riz and other people, is that it's always about, am I betraying my heart? How does my heart feel? And it sounds kind of lame to say it out loud, but I think that's what you have to constantly be asking yourself, that does it feel honest? And I think to also have actors like Ali Khan, to have Hussein Manowar, Sudha Butcher, Anjana Vasan, to have Nabhan Rizwan, everyone challenged me every day of filmmaking. Like, yo, I wouldn't say that. Yo, like my name wouldn't be this. Hey, I don't think I would do it this way. And then for us to respond and be like, okay, yeah, okay, well then how would we do this? I think was something that was very important to this process. Riz was always open to it. I was always open to it. And I think even up to like the last minute of like our last day of filming, like we were just always open to this idea of, and I mean, I think it probably frustrated a lot of production. I know it frustrated like the other producers and stuff, but I think it kept things honest and it kept things real. And that was the only way I knew how to do this, because I'm coming from documentary and it has to always feel like something's being revealed to you. And that's when it's exciting. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that's at least my
very well. Okay, I'm gonna go to some questions from home to begin with, and we'll come back. So Amanda Gaia is saying, Riz, first of all, happy birthday. Oh, happy birthday. She's asking about the daily routine of filming. The film was, she believes, filmed in a short time. So how did that routine come together?
Yeah, seeing a few questions, and to be honest, we could rattle off some answers to them quite quickly, to some of them, actually. So thinking about, what the daily routine was of filming, we'd usually come in at the start of the day, and then rewrite the script for the day, usually. Then we talk through, how we were going to cover it and shoot it and stuff, and what that meant for the time and stuff. And then we'd sprint without stopping till the end. And usually I'd be eating very, very little food. It's one of the things that maybe, I always wonder how much it does register, but I lost 10 kilos in 3 weeks to shoot this film. So at the start of the film, I'm 10 kilos heavier than I am at the end of it. But we didn't end up doing any like Christian Bale machinist kind of shots to register it. So I was kind of like a slightly cruel joke in the end, which I'm not sure actually reads. But it was basically just about drinking coffee, not eating food, and sprinting all day with an amazing crew.
We're not recommending that to anyone at home, by the way.
Yes, it's a very bad idea. I did it relatively safely with a nutritionist. So it's definitely don't try this at home.
Just going back to that point of kind of then rewriting on set, I just want to, and we haven't touched on it at all. I am a massive fan of magical realism and love that in the film. Kind of, I feel that it gives a certain element of truth that you don't often, there's in magical realism, there's the ability to kind of play into truth in the way that our subconscious gives us our truth, but we don't often, you don't often get to share it. But in this way, you've both beautifully depicted it kind of in the visual form. Was that always there, or is that something that came a little later?
I think that was always there, because I think it came from a truth of illness. I think in Sufism, there's this feeling, there's this truth in Sufism, which is an Islamic science of spirituality, that when you are ill, your heart is being purified and there are being veils lifted from your heart. And I've always found that to be very fascinating. And like, what does that look like? These veils being lifted from your heart, in a moment of illness. So to me, it felt like, there's So I just wanted to kind of bring that to life in some capacity.
Yeah. In terms of magical realism, that's very much Bassam. This would have been probably a much more formally and stylistically traditional film without Bassam. I think, Bassam really does always take this seriously, this idea of what we contribute into the language of cinema, as he said, and actually how can we speak in our native tongue? Is it Arthur Jaffa talks about this idea of black visual intonation, and something that Khalil Joseph talks about as well. He talks about how his favorite filmmaker is Miles Davis. Talks about how actually black filmmaking should not just inhabit white Eurocentric filmmaking with different characters and plots. We need to kind of take in the rhythm and the beat of jazz and black music and black culture. What does brown visual intonation look like? It's a question we were asking ourselves very explicitly in the making of this film. We hope to contribute to that conversation. and start that conversation in diaspora. You know, how can we take in from Mughal miniatures and Islamic art in terms of how things are framed? How can we take in Islamic mythology and storytelling and you know, circularity of some of our storytelling and stories within stories and dream sequences being central to how, you know, we derive meaning from stories. We wanted to kind of bring a lot of that to the table, and that was you know, Bassam kind of constantly asking those questions and trying to push the form in that way.
And then also not only in kind of those moments of kind of the dream or those sequences, but also through your music. And there is a kind of pulling on, you know, obviously from rap culture, but pulling from like Islamic culture and pulling on from kind of the traditions of a Qawwali, for, you know, the music of your ancestors. I'm sure that was obviously very, very conscious and kind of intrinsically linked into, like you said, pulling into artistic forms that are not often reflected, or we don't often get an opportunity to get reflected in Western cinema.
Yeah, we wanted to open up that palette, you know, for sure. Trying to develop our own grammar, you know, in the same way that Zed is looking for a home to where he can be his full self. In the same way that, you know, I as an artist am looking for a place to put my full self into a character. Bassam as a filmmaker is looking for a space to bring all his influences, you know, together to some extent, I think.
I'm going to go to a couple more of these questions. So Simon Hannon is asking, as you rewrote on the day, did your choice of camera shots and how you told the story visually change every day? Or was that pre-planned? How did you navigate?
Oh my God. Yeah, wild. I think my DP probably wanted to kill me, because we had everything prepped out and everything. And then the day of, somebody would bring a suggestion. I remember Riz was like, what if you did this? And I was like, oh God, that's such a good idea. Shut up, Riz. And then we do it and it would be great. And I think to have that kind of openness can be really frustrating for a lot of people, but you just have to trust it. I think for us, like, I think sometimes Riz and I would plan something and then I'd set it up. I'm like, I don't like this. And I'd send everyone away and then we'd redo it. And then I'd bring everybody back. And it's frustrating for everybody involved. I'm pretty sure I frustrated Riz, I frustrated my DP and everyone. What we have to do is you have to keep mining for a truth, and you have to find the truth in the frame, because the frame is what matters at the end of the day. I mean, of course, who you are and not being a dick really is, I think, the most important thing in this is like your relationships. For me, cinema is about relationships, I've realized, because if I wanted to be a sculptor, or if I wanted to just work alone, I would have been a sculptor, a writer, a comedian, or something else. But I have a desire to work with people to make and find some honesty in my own self. And that requires being good with other people, like building relationships, not betraying trust, to keep people's secrets and all that. And I think in that, you will push it. I remember Riz said something to me really beautiful. I think it was sort of the middle of the shoot, and it always gets tough. And he looked at me and he goes, look, I know we're going to get through this, and it's going to be tough, but I have to believe that we're going to get through this, and we're going to be good at the end of this. And it was so important for him to have said that. And I think I'm looking at some of the questions here. So this is like my uncle voice coming out, like, because I know some of y'all are maybe like film students and all that, is that when he had said something like that, where it's like, I know we're going to get through this to the end of this, it then gives you that trust that, you know what, we're going to take these leaps together. We're going to make mistakes together. We're going to cut each other off. We may even disrespect each other, but we're going to come back and we're going to ask for forgiveness, and we're going to make this work because there's something bigger here that we're building towards. And I think that's something to like remember as we're doing this, is that this isn't like a one-man sport. Or a one-woman sport. It's like we're in this together. And that means sometimes taking the best idea wherever it comes from. And, you know, there's this last thing I would say on that is like, there's this thing that like I realized in England, perhaps, was like, there's a lot of like middle-class filmmakers. And I think with that, I think they bring a certain assertiveness to set. And I didn't perhaps have that. So I think I felt like I was weak, because I guess in the States, it's a bit different. Like I was always just working with my friends on smaller sets, so it didn't really matter. So I was always worried about coming off weak, right? And now I'm just like, whatever, I don't care. Like we just have to get to the truth of it. And whoever has the answer that I feel is most closest to the truth is where I want to go with it. And I think that was a really hard thing for me to even come to, is that why does Riz have the best answer sometimes over me? I want to be the one with the best answer. So that's something that I
Well,
just
you know, I
wanted
mean,
to
the
point out.
first thing that goes out the window when you're making a film is your ego and the illusion of individualism. And that's, again, it's like the thing. I always just, it's just a hard and fast rule. You don't see it coming into a film, but the same thing the film is trying to teach the character, the film is teaching you. And the film is teaching us is what the film is teaching Zed, which is you're not an individual. This is a team sport. You're a link in a chain. You're a link in a chain, Riz. You're a link in a chain, Bassam. You're a link in the chain, Zed. There's Toba Tek Singh. There's you. There's RPG. There's you, your dad. There's the next generation. You know, yeah. I'm just wondering, should we do like a rapid fire, like of answering some of these questions? Because I
Sure.
feel like we could get some of them pretty quickly.
Let's
Was
do
it a
it.
conscious decision not to fully explain the backstory of Toba Tek Singh, wanting to seek him out yourself? Yes. How important do you think a story like Mogul Mowgli is in time like 2020? Very. Most important film ever. Riz, did the movie inspire album or the other way around? Actually, really, I think I put, no, the album took shape after the film, kind of overlap, blurry. Who knows? What did you learn from working on big films and smaller films? Every film is different. Go on, and Bassam, do you want to knock some of these out?
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking at the Pussy Fried Chicken one by Gabriel, and we're looking to put it out soon. So we'll give you your fix. We'll let it
Fried
we'll let
chicken
it out.
video is coming soon.
There's one on authenticity here, which is always kind of that question that always crops up, but it is, how did the concept of authenticity, remaining authentic to you, your history, your individual experience, and those of your characters impact the production genesis of the film, if at all? And how does this differ from any other art you've produced?
I think this brings together more of the different sides of ourselves more than anything maybe we've done before.
Yeah.
In that sense. And again, don't worry about being authentic, worry about being honest, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Any advice for young Asian filmmakers coming out of school? What's your advice, Riz? I got some advice, but I want to know.
Don't try and be like other people. Do you?
My advice would be, I think right now with the pandemic still kind of happening, and you know, and it's a really difficult time, like for a lot of young people. So my heart goes out for a lot of y'all that are looking to figure out what the hell you're doing right now, and maybe perhaps you're in the middle of filming something and then it got shut down, and I'm really sorry if that happened. Something that I learned earlier on was two things. What do you have? Like, there are always two questions that I always ask. And actually, Riz, you even helped me come with these questions. It's like, what is it that I have access to right now that only I have access to, right? Like, what is it that I have access to? And all of us have access to those stories that only we have access to, right? Maybe it's your mother's story. Maybe it's something close to you. Maybe it's your own story. And then how is it that I can tell that story in a way that feels honest and true to me? So that's it. It's how you tell it. What is it that you have access to, and how do you tell it? And I would say that right now, start doing a bit, just pick up the camera yourself, learn to edit if you don't know how to edit. You need to be able to do everything right now as a young filmmaker. You need to be able to edit. You need to be able to like shoot. You need to be able to act, even if that's what you're doing, or write. Like you can't depend on anyone right now. I feel like you need to start learning these skills as well. And then I think as you start building the skills, then people can see what you have to offer. Because it's just hard to basically throw yourself out there and say, well, this is what I need and this is the team I need to build. You can do this stuff. You have all the tools with you. And another advice I would give a lot of young filmmakers is to get off social media, like, because it's not going to help you right now. Right now, social media is going to just deter you from doing the work. I think that's my feeling, Riz. I don't know, but I feel like particularly when you're young, it can really sap a lot of your creative energy away, because you'll look at somebody that's doing something,
comparing, and it's like,
yeah.
It's not what matters. Hard to get off though, because it's a means of distribution, isn't it? How do you shift the mentality of individualism that holds us back in some ways? Yeah, you just on a film set, you realize it's a team sport, and also, you know, you realize, I guess again, what Zed's realizing is that we're all standing on the shoulders of people come before us. We're not just descendants, we're ancestors. It's just a fact. You can either kind of live a small life as an individual, or live an expansive, or be a small part of an endless ongoing conversation, you know, when you realize you're a link in this chain. How did you prepare for this role? Literally by living my actual life. Who the RPG based on? RPG was based on Bassam as a young man. How long did it take for you to complete the script? The script is still not complete. We're still rewriting it as we speak. No, we were just constantly just like tinkering with it and stuff. What other art has or film has influenced a particular collaboration, Bassam? Who/what inspired you? Any filmmakers you want to
Yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to Abbas Kiarostami and sort of his fluidity in Iranian cinema. I would also say The Day I Became a Woman is this phenomenal film. I forget the filmmaker's name, forgive me, but I think it's Mohsen Makhmalbaf's wife, I think, or daughter who made it, so please forgive me. But it's called The Day I Became a Woman, which I think everyone should watch. Another film that I think we both love is La Haine. You know, I think La Haine is something that's really, yeah, I think it's such a middle finger of a film. And yeah, I don't know. And I think honestly, man, if you think about it, I think paintings played a huge role in our work, right? Like we looked at like,
the Met Museum and the Islamic art collection there, and we were just kind of looking at South Asian Islamic art. You know, the Mughal miniature, the way that you see everything in the frame, and it's kind of, it presents you. It's like, you know, in theater they talk about Brecht. You know, Brechtian device is like distancing you from what you're looking at. So it's like, no, this is not reality. You are looking at a picture. You are looking at a play. Mughal miniatures do the same thing when they flatten out the world and present you a deliberately two-dimensional image. Even after perspective, you know, had kind of come into play in South Asian painting. And it's presenting the two-dimensional, presenting to the play as a play, you know, making you aware of that. And, you know, hiding people's faces, for example, particularly kind of spiritual figures. And, you know, we embraced that with the Tobatek Singh character. So, you know, you just name-checked Kiarostami. I'm just going to go and grab something and show you, because I literally, just for my birthday, got given this.
No way.
I don't know if you guys know Through the Olive Groves, part of the Coca trilogy. Anyway, if you've seen the Coca trilogy by Kiarostami, then you want to, Tare, where are my white socks? So this is the best birthday present I got given.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, but that sounds really cool.
That's a sick. It's a sick. It's if you watch the Coca trilogy, then it's a line that kind of keeps coming up. Anyways.
I think we might be fresh at a time, but how La Haine 25 years ago this year kind of was genre defining for Kassovitz. I believe that Mogul Mowgli is doing the same for kind of South Asian diaspora cinema, kind of really progressing kind of our stories and elevating them into a new stratosphere. So Bassam, Riz, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for the film.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the support, and thanks everyone for your questions. Thank you for people who've checked it out. If you and please do tell people about this film. You know, please do spread the word. It's available on the BAFTA portal. It's available on BFI Player. It's a small film. It's a labor of love, but we think it has a lot to say. So, yeah, please do spread the word. We love people to share in this film and in this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Take care, guys. Much love.